Hello, friends. Happy Monday. How are you guys doing? I hope you are doing well. Let's see. This week has been very, very busy. First week of school, trying to get settled in, getting used to the classes, reading the syllabuses, and all that fun student life stuff. Well, what else is new? I've been trying to do my best at taking care of myself and taking care of my health, to include my physical and my mental health. And my husband and I started to go to the gym. Well, my husband has started going back for quite a while, but I have started to join him, and I have been eating better, and I'm feeling better. And my goal is to lose weight and to feel better, feel more confident, and those kind of things. So what else is there? Another hobby of mine that I have been into is ancestry type of things. And it's just really cool to see where my family comes from and the confirmedness of how crazy we are as a family. So that's been great. I started to track on my mother's side immigrants that came from other countries, and I put together like a little sheet and I sent it to my mom, and I asked her, where do you think we come from? And there were a few surprises in there, so that's really cool. But most of it was expected. Other than that, I don't think there's anything new, any updates. So yeah, let's get started. Do you feel stressed a lot, or maybe just at times? Maybe at work, or if you're a student like me, like right before exams, you get super stressed. Well, guess what we're gonna talk about today? We're gonna talk about stress, everything about it, and everything you love about stress, which probably isn't anything in particular, because stress actually, to me, sucks, but there are actually some benefits to stress, which we don't really think about. But don't worry, we're gonna learn about that today. I'm your host, Kitty Gonzalez, and you're listening to What the Psychology. Well, here I am recording in my office. And looking down, and the noise you hear of that clickering sound, that's Augie, the chief editor. As most of you know, is my 3-year-old Shih Tzu. And I sometimes think of, what would it be like to be a dog? People love on you and cuddle with you. They feed you, they give you water. They take you out to go pee and go poop. And you don't have to worry about bills or even really thinking about anything. Like, life would just be so simple and so easy as a dog, wouldn't it? Man, that would be the dream. But too bad, too sad. That is not our lives as humans. So we're going to talk about stress today, because I feel like in the time that we're in the era, this is very important to talk about. So first off, what is stress? Many of us can define it in our own words as feeling like worried or tight, I guess, like in your chest, or I don't know. Everyone could probably define it differently, and it could be different for them. Now, stress can be defined as any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. Now, that's a really good word to define it. So stress is your body's response to anything that requires attention or action. Very similar to the fight or flight type of experience that we go through whenever we have a fear response. It's the same body systems working. Everyone experiences stress to some degree. If you don't, or you pretend you don't, you're crazy. Yeah, everyone experiences it. Some people are less stressed, but everyone experiences it at some time in their lives. Now, the way you respond to stress, however, that can make a big difference to your overall well-being. We're going to go over how stress can affect your health a little bit later in this episode. Now, stress, generally, it refers to two things. So the psychological perception of pressure on one hand, and then the body's response to it, which is on the other hand. And that involves multiple systems, from metabolism to muscle to memory, which that probably makes sense why I have a forgetful memory. And My husband can attest to this. Like, sometimes he'll say, remember this one time that this happened? And I have no recollection of it. Yeah. And you just like, how do you not remember that? Like, you have such a horrible memory. And reading through this, I'm like, well, it's probably because I'm stressed all the time. But we'll go into that a little bit more. Now, some stress, it is necessary for all living systems. It is the means by which they encounter and respond to the challenges and uncertainties of existence. So, like fear, the perception of danger, it sets off an automatic response system known as the fight or flight response. So that activates through hormonal signals, and it prepares an animal to meet a threat or to flee from it. Hence, this does say animal. And I joked about being a dog, but if you're like a type of canine and you're a wolf, I'm sure they encounter stress more often than the chief editor. Although he probably gets stressed at me trying to make him edit all of these recordings. Now, one thing that is very important to know is that when throughout the fight or flight response, when the perceived threat is gone or that stressful event settles down, systems are designed to return to normal function via the relaxation response. So now sometimes the best way to manage your stress involves changing your situation or changing your perception of the situation. Now, other times the best strategy is just how you respond to that situation. So developing a clear understanding of how stress impacts your physical and mental health is extremely important. And that's why I'm here, you guys. I am here to teach you this, and I'm here to learn about it myself. Because for me, I know it's very important. I did say that I am stressed all the time, and that is no joke. And I know last episode I got really in depth about my depression, and I also mentioned, I think I mentioned it, I'm also diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and I think this is why I'm stressed all the time, because that's one of the symptoms of the diagnosis. I'm just anxious and stressed all the time, but I have learned different ways to recognize my level of stress and to try to combat it. And we'll go over that a little bit, and I'll give you my own tips as well. It's very important to not only know how stress impacts your health, but also it's important to realize how your mental and physical health affects your stress level. So it's kind of like a cycle, if that makes sense. You being stressed can impact your physical and mental health, but also your mental and your physical state also affects your stress level. So if we go back to kind of like the fight or flight response, so a stressful event, whether it's the sudden appearance of a snake on the path or the fear of losing your job when the boss yells. So now we're going to talk about phobias again, right? Going back to episode 1. If I see a frog, I'm going to have a very stressful response to that, or a very fearful response to that. But it can also be fear of losing your job when the boss yells at you. That could trigger a cascade of hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol, that surge through the body. And I've talked about neurotransmitters and hormones, they kind of work in the same way as having receptors. Cortisol is the most widely known stress hormone because adrenaline is also associated with other things as well. But it's probably a better response than cortisol. So these hormones, they increase heartbeat and the circulation of blood to support quick action, mobilize fat and sugar for immediate energy, focus attention to track the danger, and they prepare muscles for movement and more. This response is meant to be short-term, and it's supposed to be a life-saving type of thing. It's not supposed to be intended for difficulties such as daily traffic jams or marital issues. A few of the many challenges that can hijack the stress response includes the ones that aren't really supposed to be the ones that hijack it. So now short bursts of stress, they aren't inherently harmful, although it can take time for the body to calm down. So we talked about adrenaline. I know we've all heard stories about that one person who gets that adrenaline and they could literally lift a car like Mr. Hulk. And that's true. Like your body sends all that adrenaline for you to respond to whatever stressful, fearful, life-threatening event is happening. If you're being attacked or something, you can fight off whatever or whoever. Not all types of stress are harmful or even negative. So some of the different types of stress that you might experience include acute stress. So this is very short term, and it can either be positive or more distressing. So this is the type of stress we most often encounter in day-to-day life. Maybe you're stuck at that traffic light, which I know can be very stressful, especially if you live in a big city. Then there's episodic acute stress. So this is acute stress that seems to run rampant and be a way of life. So it's creating a life of ongoing distress. And it's kind of like you feel like you're constantly under pressure. Then there's eustress, which is kind of funny because eustress, like, yeah, we all stress. But this is the fun and exciting kind. So it's known as positive type of stress that can keep you energized. Man, I wish I felt that. Which sometimes I do, actually. Like when I'm in my classes, I kind of get stressed, but I also get energized because I'm learning something new. Or I remember when I was in the Air Force and there would be very stressful times at work. But I was very energetic in response to that kind of stress because I work well under pressure. And so there would be something like that would come up and it would kind of be an emergency. And then I'd have a deadline. And it just put me at a pace where it was like, okay, let's do this. And it was a positive type of response. So it's associated with surges of adrenaline, such as when you're skiing or racing to meet a deadline, kind of like what I said. Adrenaline junkies and why people get addicted to, I wouldn't even say addicted, but they like to experience adrenaline type stuff such as like skydiving. Another example, I recently went parasailing, which is kind of adrenaline type of activity. Those are good types of stresses, and it's kind of weird to say, oh, that's experiencing stress. Well, yes, it is, because your body is still responding. It's just how you perceive that event. Now let's talk about chronic stress. So this is like the never-ending and inescapable type. It's like the stress of a bad marriage or an extremely taxing job. It can also stem from traumatic experiences and childhood trauma. The difference between this and other stresses is that it's just never ending. When chronic stress is prevalent, the relaxation response doesn't occur often enough, and being in a near constant state of fight or flight can cause damage to the body. That usually doesn't occur on a regular basis. Like maybe once in a while you have the relaxation response, but usually this means that the body remains in a constant state of physiological arousal. So this type of stress can lead to unhealthy habits that have a negative impact on your health. Some people, they will cope with stress by smoking or eating too much even. And those can damage the body and create bigger problems in the long term. So chronic stress not only affects your mind, but also your body. It produces both physical and psychological symptoms that can take a toll on a person's ability to function normally in their daily life, which in turn becomes maladaptive. The symptoms of chronic stress, they can vary in severity from one person to the next. My symptoms may be different than another person's symptoms. Mine may be more severe than other person's, or maybe certain symptoms may be more severe and then others may be not as severe. Chronic stress has the same symptoms as regular stress. However, prolonged or repeated arousal of the stress response can have harmful physical and psychological consequences. So those repercussions include many different things that can be from heart disease and diabetes to anxiety and depression, which I have both of those. So I don't know, maybe like the causes that we talked about last week are the causes, or it could be stress, or it could be all of them. So now stress is not always easy to recognize, and I completely agree with that, because if you're the type of person who is always stressed, you may not recognize that you're stressed. However, there are some ways to identify some signs that you might be experiencing too much stress. Sometimes it can come from an obvious source. Sometimes it's even just a buildup of small daily stressors from work, school, family, friends, your grandma, your grandpa, your chief editor who doesn't work, so on and so forth. And if you think that stress might be affecting you maladaptively, I should say, I'm going to throw in that fancy word that you guys should know by now, These are the things to look out for. So there could be psychological signs. So maybe you have difficulty concentrating, worrying, anxiety, and trouble remembering. There are emotional signs, such as being angry, irritated, moody, or frustrated. There can be changes of mood. There are physical signs, so if you have high blood pressure, changes in weight, frequent colds or infections, clammy or sweaty palms, diarrhea, difficulty sleeping, digestive problems, or even maybe changes in appetite, dizziness, grinding your teeth, headaches, low injury, and then muscle tension, especially in the neck and shoulders. And that is very much me. I have a lot of muscle tension. My neck, my shoulders, and back, they're always like just so tense. And I have to go get massages, which is a little bit of self-care to help with that tension. But I'm also hopefully going to see a chiropractor because I think it's deeper than just stress because I've been dealing with that for quite a while. There are also physical aches and pains, racing heartbeat, and trembling. And there are also behavioral signs, and these include poor self-care, not having time for the things you enjoy, or relying on drugs and alcohol to cope. Behavior is a very important thing. And last week I talked about how for my depression I was treated with meds before I could really start to change my behavior. Like for me, I was in such a rut that I had to be dug out first, and then I could start making those behavioral changes to make myself feel better and have proper self-care. And that has been a goal of mine for this year's, to care about myself and to care about my health, whether that's spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, all of those things. And it's not easy. It's a lot of work. And so if you're a person that has these signs and things that you recognize that stress is heavily affecting you, recognize that. And hopefully later in this episode with some of the tips that I give you, you can implement those. Because it is important to take care of yourself, to find time to do the things that you enjoy, and that can be done in many ways. So stress, it can be short term, which is what it's meant to be, or it can be long term. But both can lead to a variety of symptoms, but chronic stress can take a serious toll on the body over time and have long-lasting health effects. So how can you identify if you are chronically stressed? Because it's pervasive and long-lasting, people, they grow accustomed to it and they think that that's normal. So how can you evaluate your own stress level? Ask yourself some questions, okay? Or maybe have your spouse or your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your grandma, your parent, your friend ask your questions if you don't want to ask them yourself. Or maybe if you recognize someone else is stressed and they don't recognize it, you can ask them this or evaluate in your own mind. Question 1. Are you often moody or irritated? Question 2. Does it always feel like you are always worrying about something? Question 3. Does it seem like you don't have time to take care of yourself or do the things that you enjoy? Question 4. Do the smallest inconveniences seem like too much to handle? Question 5. Do you always seem to catch colds or get infections? Question 6. Have you been relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol to manage your stress? Now for me, I answered, I'll say positively, meaning identifying that I have chronic stress to, let me count. 1, 2. So 4 out of 6 of these, I would say I could say yes to, like, yep, that's me, yep, that's me, yep, and yep. I'm not going to tell on myself and tell you what those are. But if you really want to guess, you can always leave a comment on Facebook whenever I publish this episode and be like, hey, Katie, you must be chronically stressed in these areas, and then I'll let you know if you're right or wrong. I don't mind you picking on me. It's fine. So nowadays, in our fast-paced lifestyle, chronic stress has become all too frequent. And everything from high-pressure jobs to loneliness to busy traffic can keep the body in a state of the perceived threat and chronic stress. Estimates do suggest that between 60 to 80% of primary care visits involve a stress-related component. That's kind of crazy. That is why it is so important for us to learn stress management techniques, make healthy lifestyle changes if needed, and to safeguard yourself from the negative impact of chronic stress. Okay, so here's a question. Why am I always stressed and anxious? I'm asking you guys that. You have to answer. You're the experts, right? right? Well, many people today, they feel that they perpetually struggle with stress and anxiety. I'm raising my hand and shaking my head like crazy right now. So society's obsession with productivity, the steady stream of digital information we consume, increasingly sedentary lifestyles, and feelings of overwhelm, they can contribute to the stress that so many people are feeling. So how do I manage stress? Please tell me, guys. Please tell me. I'm struggling. Actually, I'm not struggling as much as I used to. But plan and organize your time. That's very important. I started to do that, and I still struggle with that, especially my sleep schedule. But if you can plan and organize your time, then you can reflect on your values and your strengths, and you can practice relaxation techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, yoga, those kind of things if you're into it. You can also reframe negative thoughts about a situation to a neutral or positive thoughts so that you can see the full picture. There are also other ways to do this, but definitely planning and organizing is a big one. And then you can also schedule in things that you enjoy, whether you're going to go get a massage, whether you're going to work in your garden, whether you're going to go ride your motorcycle, whether you're going to paint, play music, have a game night with friends. Whether you're going to make time for those enjoyable activities that will help combat some of that stress that you're feeling and release that. So we've talked about the unhealthy ways that people respond to stress. But healthy coping does include like meditation, exercise, journaling, practicing gratitude, so maybe writing down all the things you're thankful for, and that can also shift your mind into a positive way of thinking. And then trying to let go of what is beyond our control. And I hope my mom is listening because me and her have had conversations. And that is one thing that she has always told me. Like, Katie, don't worry about the things you can't control because it's out of your hands. Like, if you have no control over it, why are you worrying about it? Why you're stressing about it? And that's been a very good nugget of information that I've learned and I've had to implement because I like to be in control. I like to plan things, which can be good, but it can also be bad because then I think I'm in control of everything. But that's not true. There are things that we cannot control that cause us stress, and if we just start to kind of be more flexible and more fluid with how we feel with things that are not in our control, then that can evolve to us being less stressed when we occur those. So now what about work stress or school stress? So instead of fixating on an overwhelming worry or responsibility, be very specific about the tasks that you need to be completed. So if you break down each one into something small and manageable, and then you can focus one at a time on getting those done, then trying to multitask, you will feel less stressed and you will feel more accomplished. So now I've had to do this because whenever I log into my school online, because I do all my classes online, and we have a little dashboard, and it pretty much tells you everything that's due by the end of the week for every class. And that can be very, very overwhelming to look at the long list of things that I have to complete. And that makes me very stressed. But now instead, if I can click on one class and see those 1 or 2 assignments and get those done, I feel less stressed. And then I feel more accomplished. And I'm like, okay, what's next class? Let's go, let's do it. Now, another thing that I really want to focus on because of the times that we are in. What about the coronavirus? How do I cope with stress pertaining to that? And it's kind of crazy how these symptoms of stress can lead to illness. So could lead to probably you catching COVID or being more susceptible to that. Like I said, control what you can and then try to release concerns that you cannot control. Also recognizing the signs of stress that we've already talked about. And in this time, especially with the heavy suggestion of isolation, and I've said this from the beginning, those that know me, they know that I'm a heavy advocate for mental health. And I've said from the start when Corona first broke out was, this is not going to be good for mental health and for child development because they started to close down schools. We had to social distance and we had to isolate or quarantine even if we weren't sick. And this has a lot of impact on the brain. when you are more isolated, you are more tend to be focused on only the things that are around you and your own thoughts and your own feelings. And that can lead to all these bad health problems. Also, when it comes to social media and the news, everyone's got an opinion about the coronavirus, how to handle it. People have opinions about the vaccines and are very hateful towards people on one side or the other. Some people want to force people to do certain things, and others feel like our freedom is being breached. What we should do instead is limit your news consumption, limit your social media, start to reach out to loved ones and practice self-care. Start focusing on yourself. Don't worry about the haters, don't worry about the opinions of others, or even the opinion of people that believe the same as you do. And I've had to do this on social media. I don't want to lose the friends I have because whether I agree with them or not, I still want to know about their life and know about their opinions. But if all I'm seeing is them posting negative and hateful things, whether I agree with them or not, because I've had to do this with people I wholeheartedly agree with and people that I don't agree with at all, I'm just tired of seeing the negativity and people at each other's throats. I know on Facebook there's this lovely button called mute, and you can mute that person for 30 days. And there are people where I've just had to, every 30 days, mute them because I don't want to see what they have to say, regardless. That's one thing that you can do, is limit what you're seeing as well. Don't get into those arguments. The isolation, not only for people that are mentally healthy, but those that are not mentally healthy, such as myself, that have mental illnesses. This has been a very extremely challenging time in my life. And even what I shared last episode, and I talked about what happened last August, that was in the slap dab middle of coronavirus. And that's right before I started school, where I was being isolated. And yeah, it's not good. Especially when you already have such negativity or negative thoughts about yourself, and then you're on social media and all you see is negativity, and you're not getting those positive relationships or going out and seeing people. That really has a negative effect. One thing we don't talk about a lot that goes with the pandemic is the number of suicides that have occurred. I found a study, and the thing is, this is only for adolescents aged 12 to 17. And so during 2020, the proportion of mental health related emergency department visits among adolescents increased 31% compared with that during 2019. So this was during the COVID pandemic. The visits for suspected suicide attempts began to increase among adolescents. During February 21st to March 2021, suspected suicide attempt emergency department visits were 50.6% higher among girls than during the same period in 2019. Now, among boys, suspected suicide attempts increased 3.7%. So now investigators, they studied suicide death information in Maryland from January 1st through July 7th. In 2020, and then they divided that data into 3 sub-periods. A pre-COVID period, so January 1st through March 4th. A peak pandemic/lockdown period, so March 5th through May 7th. And a progressive reopening period, which is May 8th through July 7th. Daily suicide mortality was divided by race and compared with the same time periods in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So overall, there were 236 suicides during the first half of 2020, 161 among whites, 50 among blacks, and the rest among people of other ethnicities. So unlike the peak period, statistics for the first and third subperiods were similar to previous years. So now it is possible that more white residents than black residents found greater social support during the first pandemic peak, or maybe they had a deeper economic cushion to ride out the shutdown, but further study is necessary. So although if you look at some sources, it does say that there was a decrease overall, that's not true. if you break things down in a different way. That's another thing with statistics. People can always play with statistics and make them look a way that isn't entirely true or doesn't show the whole picture. Now, some more things about the pandemic in particular. Nearly half of parents say the level of stress in their life has increased compared with before the pandemic, particularly those with children who are still home for remote learning. Parents are already saying that they have increased levels of stress, probably because now they have to shuffle their whole lives. If they're working full-time and they're not working from home, who's going to care for their children? How are they going to pay? If they work from home, how are they going to handle getting their own work done and caring for children, so having those disruptions that they normally wouldn't have? 61% of adults report experiencing undesired weight changes since the start of the pandemic, with more than 2 in 5 saying that they gained more weight than they intended. Probably because we're isolated, we're not being as active, we're not going out and socializing. So 2 in 3 Americans say that they are sleeping more or less than they wanted to since the pandemic started. And nearly half of Americans say that they delayed or canceled healthcare services. So just some facts about the pandemic. Do your own research. Read what the medical professionals have to say. And make the best decisions you can based on yourself, based on what you know, and based on what is best for you. We're going to talk about treatment and coping now. So if severe chronic stress is causing significant distress or impairing your ability to function normally, professional treatment can help you develop new coping skills to find ways to lower your stress levels, which would mean that you would experience that relaxation response more often than what you normally would, which is a good thing. Approaches such as cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, can help you learn to identify negative thought patterns that contribute to chronic stress. So maybe working with a therapist, you can then begin to change these thoughts to more realistic, helpful ones. You can also learn and gain more coping tools that will help you better manage your response to stress. So mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, is another approach that can help people utilize mindfulness and meditation to cope with chronic stress. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I do see a psychologist, and he is incredible. I see him through the VA, and he is very attentive to my struggles, the things that I'm good at, my goals, and helping me recognize different areas that I need to work on. And he's very good at giving me the tools to combat those. Another thing is medications. So especially if you have anxiety or depression, your doctor, they can prescribe different medications to help manage some of the symptoms of stress. They could prescribe an antidepressant. Or, they may also prescribe medications that help with some of the physical symptoms that you are experiencing. Like if you're having issues with your sleep or if you constantly have stomach aches, they can give you medication that helps reduce your stomach being upset. Alright, now the part we've all been waiting for. I gave you all the boring information. I try to make it entertaining by providing some personal things about myself. But this one is coping. I'm going to read off the things that I got from my notes, and then I'm going to add some things that I will suggest, things that I haven't already suggested. It is important to begin using stress management techniques as early as possible. Even if you don't recognize that you have chronic stress, if you do, if you don't, these will help you either way. And these are managed through self-help type approaches. Now, this does work for a few reasons. It does provide quick stress relief. If there's fast-acting techniques, they can reverse the stress response so that your body has a chance to recover and your mind can approach problems from a proactive stance rather than reacting from a stressed or even panicked perspective. When you're making choices from a more relaxed and confident place versus a frenzied and aggressive or panicked and stressed place, you tend to make better choices. And that will also serve your best interest, and they would avoid creating more stress for yourself. If you approach something from at work and your boss says something to you and you just react to it in your mind, and then you let that stress have a outward reaction, that may cause more stress. That may cause a demotion. That may cause like you being rid up. That may cause the boss's trust in you. Whether if you were just to take a moment and breathe and react in a different way, you could probably avoid being further stressed, if that makes sense. Stress management techniques, they also develop stress resilience, which is great. So longer-term healthy habits can also be important because they can build resilience and give you chances to take a break from stress on a regular basis. So this can help you avoid staying stressed so constantly that you don't realize how stressed you are, which can keep you from taking the steps to reduce the stress in your life. It can also save you from the more negative effects of chronic stress, and some of the most effective habits do include exercise, meditation, and journaling because they have been shown to promote resilience to stress. And this is not only from exercising the mind, but also the body. Even with journaling, if you think about it. Exercise, of course, you're increasing your heart rate and you're producing different hormones such as endorphins, which are those feel-good hormones. Meditation, which you focus your mind, but you can also focus your body. And even if you incorporate yoga, then you really are working out your body and your mind. And then I say journaling kind of as a joke, but also serious, because if you do a lot of writing, your hand starts to hurt. That's not really effective physical way, but I don't know. I was just trying to fit in. I was trying to make it funny, but whatever. Creating new coping techniques. This does change how you respond to stress, and that can help as well. So, saying no more often, which sounds kind of selfish, but saying no more often, especially if it's something that's going to overwhelm you and it's not going to help you. Which I'm sorry, but sometimes you have to be selfish, but not in a way to where you're selfish towards others. You need to be selfish in a way where you're caring for yourself so that you can be better to others. Changing your perspective can be good. That can be like changing your thinking. That can be reminding yourself of the resources you can use and the strength that you do possess. And then also approaching stress from a proactive stance can help reduce ongoing stress. So some other tips. One thing, try to get regular exercise. I know that sounds so much fun, doesn't it? But I'm just going to say this. I used to hate exercise, mainly because it caused me a lot of pain. That's what caused my foot issues. And so it kind of caused that experience. And so it's really hard for me to enjoy it. However, I'm trying to change my perspective. And I have started going to the gym, like I said, this week with my husband. And that has made me change my mind a little bit to being more positive towards it. I try to focus on the positive. After I work out, okay, yes, I may be sore and I may be hungry and a little irritated, but I feel better about myself. I feel more energized. I am able to sleep better. So even if you start to hate something, or even if you hate something, such as exercise, start to change your thinking to think of it in a more positive light. Now, there are also other things that you can do. Is this physical activity? It does have a big impact on your brain and on your body. Just like stress. However, physical activity is more of a positive impact versus stress. This is how I feel about morning runners.
Why is that person running? Are you okay? Is somebody chasing you? You're running on purpose? 7 a.m.
Anyways, if regular exercise is not your thing, whether you enjoy Tai Chi or you want to begin jogging, exercise, it does reduce stress and improves many symptoms associated with mental illness. Now, if you cannot find something like typical exercise like lifting weights or running, jogging, and you just don't enjoy those activities, maybe try to find something that does. Maybe you enjoy a sport. Maybe you want to get into an activity such as boxing or some type of mixed martial arts. And maybe it's just the fact of doing it alone. Maybe you can find some type of running club if you do like to enjoy running. There are many ways to not only get regular exercise, but also be involved in increasing your social interactions as well. All right, my favorite. Taking care of yourself. Now, incorporating regular self-care activities into your daily life is essential to stress management. It's essential to combating the many symptoms that are associated with stress. If you learn how to take care of yourself, whether that's your mind, your body, and your spirit, you can then discover how to equip yourself to live your best life. Now, this can include things like getting a massage, which is something I like to do. Maybe taking yourself out on a date. I know that sounds super cheesy. And this can also go into like the next thing I'm going to talk about. But take yourself on a date, even if it's not fancy. I mean, if you want to be fancy, be fancy. Get all dressed up and dolled up for you, yourself. And go and have a nice meal by yourself. Put your phone away and just think. And maybe, like on a date, you would ask each other questions. Maybe ask yourself some questions. Maybe not out in public, because then people may think that you're talking to yourself. So maybe not do that. But internally, start to ask yourself questions and start to reflect and answer them. That's also practicing mindfulness, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about. So mindfulness, it's not just something you practice for 10 minutes each day. Okay, it needs to be a way of life, or it can be a way of life, which preferably it becomes a way of life. You can discover how to live more mindfully throughout your day, and you can become more aware and conscious throughout your life. So being mindful is kind of like what I said. It's reflecting in your thoughts. It's changing your thinking. It's being intentional about being mindful. And that can be for a number of things. You can practice mindfully eating. You know, if you eat while you are on your phone, or if you reach to food for comfort, kind of like how I did, mindless eating is common. And that can contribute to gaining more weight, to overeating, consuming too much sugar, those kind of things. So you can be mindful about how to fuel your body. Put down your phone and resist the urge to multitask while you eat. Don't eat while you're bored. Or if you get the urge to eat, maybe reflect and think, am I really hungry or am I bored? That's something I've had to learn. So don't feel like I'm telling you what to do, because I've had to explore these things and change these things for myself. So be mindful in your interactions. So whether you're interacting with your partner, your children, your colleague, your chief editor, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your spouse, your neighbor, your grandma, your grandfather, your cousin's mama's friend. Being mindfulness in a relationship is about observing what the other person is doing in a non-judgmental way. And it's also about staying present in the moment during your conversations. So if you notice a lot of these say put down your phone, give someone your undivided attention. And instead of trying to craft a rebuttal and being defensive, try really hear what the conversations are and seek to really hear the message of the person talking to you. And if you can be mindful and pay attention to how you're feeling and how you're thinking and how you're listening and how you are going to respond in a more mindful manner rather than reacting in anger or in defense, that can really help you. And that can really help prevent stress and further conflicts as well. Engage in activities mindfully. So hygiene. And I don't mean hygiene as, just taking a shower, but take the time to engage in activities more mindfully. Especially if you have trouble with memory. If you can have a heightened sense of awareness during doing activities and being more mindful, that will really help. So like walking, gardening. This even says eating chocolate, which I'm down for. And many other activities. They can be opportunities to practice mindfulness. And that's kind of like I said, taking yourself out on a date. If you're gardening and you're walking, instead of being distracted by being on your phone, unless like you're listening to music or you're listening to podcasts, that's also fine. But maybe every now and then, try to shut all of that out and just walk and think and engage with the things that are around you. If you're walking outside, look at the nature and be more grateful for the beauty of nature that we have. So focusing on the present moment, turning into physical sensations and being fully aware of everything you do, that can help you let go of thoughts of the future or anxiety over the past. Even when cleaning the house, I know chores can be like the most fun thing ever, right? And like I said, start to view things in a more positive light. If we start to view cleaning the house in a more positive way, it can be an exercise in self-understanding and a stress reliever rather than a chore. While you start to clean, maybe focus on what you're doing as you're doing it and nothing else. So if you're washing dishes, maybe feel the warmth or the soapy water in your hands. Experience the vibrations of the vacuum cleaner as you push it over the floor. Enjoy the warmth of the fresh from the dryer laundry as you fold it. And feel the freedom of letting go of unneeded objects as you put them in a box for donation. So that's just an example. Even when you're listening to music, you can really focus on the sound and the vibration of each note, the feelings that the music stirs up within you, maybe the power behind the lyrics, and other in-the-moment sensations. If you're listening to a podcast, maybe you really take in the feelings that you're feeling or receiving the information that you're getting. Especially mine, right? It's your favorite. Yeah, I hope so. There are other opportunities to do this. For me, taking a hot shower is a good way, although I tend to listen to podcasts while I shower. The whole point is to be fully aware of what you're doing and what's happening around you. And even if your mind wanders, which does tend to happen, still congratulate yourself for noticing and gently bring your attention back to the current moment. Another way for being mindful is pausing throughout the day. Now, I tend to do this, and this can be done differently whether you spend a few moments being mindful or if you do meditation or yoga. You can also practice breathing techniques, progressive muscle relaxation, which that's kind of experienced through meditation, like they kind of guide you through that. For me, usually what I do is I go out on our deck and I lay down on one of our chairs, because it's one of those chairs that you can pretty much practically lay down. And I usually close my eyes for a few minutes, and I try to recognize the sensations that I'm feeling. And you can do this by recognizing your senses, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the birds sing, smelling. Hopefully you're smelling some good things. I don't know. Maybe smell is kind of a weird one, I feel like. Anyway, and then you can open your eyes. What are the things you see? Do you see the trees? You feel the wind? So just being present. And you don't even have to lay down for that. Sometimes I just go on the back porch. I take the chief editor, Augie, out to go potty. And while he's doing his thing, he usually runs around a bit in the yard and he wants to play. And even just taking those few moments to play with him and then taking a break and sitting on the deck and just appreciating what's around me, that is practicing mindfulness. It's taking your mind off the things and the pressures and the stress that we feel every day. Now, mindfulness, it does take practice and it takes effort. It is hard work, and no one is good at it when they first start because your mind is likely to wander repeatedly. But the more you practice it, the more effort you give it, the more better you get at your mind being more focused. And then you can really enjoy the benefits like the decreased stress, the better mental health, better relationships, and greater overall happiness. Because you're really taking this time to pause and reflect and appreciate, and you're giving your body and your mind that time to unwind versus being in a constant state of stress. I would say with self-care, find the things that you like to do. Find some hobbies. Find things that are going to be stress relievers for you and that are positive. For me, I like spending time with friends. I am one of those weird people that really does enjoy learning. But of course, learning is way more enjoyable when you're learning about things that you like. And for me, it's psychology. And so doing this podcast is kind of a way for me to enjoy some time to myself, to record and to dive into a topic that I'm interested in, and to share that information. Whether you like to paint, play music, garden, ride a motorcycle, running, going to the gym and hitting weights, going to the movies, having game nights with friends, it can be an array of things. Find things like that and try to implement them. Another thing is taking baths, which I love to take bubble baths, especially at the end of a very stressful or a day where I had a lot of schoolwork and then I went to the gym and I'm feeling sore. I take a nice hot bath with bath salts and bubbles, and occasionally I'll have a little glass of wine. If you like to get pampered, so if you like to get your nails done or your hair done, treat yourself to those every once in a while. Also, make it a point to schedule those things into your calendar, because if you don't, then you'll often forget or you'll let the daily stressors of life get to you. Also, try to put in spending time with friends and being around more positive people that will make you feel better, that will enhance you to kind of be distracted. If you can enjoy time around others, that's also a good stress reliever that it's not often really talked about, but if you can have more get-togethers, more game nights, go out to dinner with a group of friends, maybe go walking together or go downtown and walk around or something. Find something. Maybe find people with common interests or find events. Like, I know Facebook is really good about having events on there around your town. Maybe just going and getting out and seeing things and doing things can also help. Especially during this time of the pandemic where things are kind of starting to change and starting to shift. It's kind of hard to tell where things are going to go from here. And even if things are shut down, go outside to a park and just walk. Maybe if you like to paint, go to the store, buy some paint supplies, and paint at home. You can find YouTube channels on different things to paint, steps on how to paint, things like that. You can start a new hobby, you can fail at that hobby, but the fact that you're trying to do it is what counts. For me, that was like gardening for me. I tried to garden this year and it did not turn out that well, and honestly, I don't really have the patience for it. And it's weird. I can take care of a live animal, such as my chief editor, Augie, but when it comes to like plants and vegetables, I'm sorry, they're like dead within, I don't know, they die. And so I discovered this year that gardening is not my thing. But you know, that's fine because I guess I'm good at the podcasting thing. I like to think so. If you're still listening, you're proof of that. But the whole point is find things that you like to do, find ways to pamper yourself, make a plan, make a schedule, do better with your habits, and start to enjoy life more. Put down your phone, get off social media, change what you're seeing on social media, change what you're seeing on the news, because most of it is what they want you to hear. Most of it is negative and fearful, and it's just not good on your health, and it's definitely not good on your mental health. Now, I'm not saying to not take things seriously, because we should definitely take things seriously, but especially when it comes to serious things such as the pandemic and the opinions of other people and what they think is best for you, those are the people you don't need to listen to. Be educated, be informed, do your own research, talk to a doctor, talk to people in the field, or find actual studies instead of some link from Facebook that is actually irrelevant, and find the information that pertains to the situation and make the decisions on what is going to be best for you. Take the precautions needed, but don't completely abandon yourself by locking yourself in your house and not talking to anybody, because that is not healthy for the most healthy person. So with that, how do you cope? Are you always anxious and on edge, kind of like how I am / used to be, because it's a work in progress? What are your hobbies? What are some things that you can change to combat stress? What are some hobbies and activities that you can start to put your mind on? What are some ways that you can pamper yourself and treat yourself? Because remember, you are worth it. And honestly, if you don't think that and you don't feel that, I understand. But I am telling you that you are worth it. And at least that's one person telling you. So go pamper yourself. Practice some mindfulness. Ignore the haters. And live a better, less stressed life. I am your host, Katie Gonzalez. And you've been listening to What the Psychology. Stay psyched, y'all.